All right, guys, you want to get involved in real estate and you want to know why, even to buy rentals, okay? Let's talk about some of the quick advantages there is to buying rentals. Number one, guys, cash flow, getting reoccurring payments. I don't want to mislead anybody. It's not truly passive, okay? At best, it's semi-passive. Passive being you'd be making money, basically doing nothing. There is stuff to be done, even if you have a property manager, okay? They'll still tell you, hey, we need to replace this, or we've been doing that. And you do have to manage the manager, so to speak. So it's not completely passive, but it is reoccurring, okay? The more cash flow coming in, the more you can be financially free. The next is tax advantages. Without going into a deep dive of how depreciation works, basically you're going to be able to write off for that property, at least the actual building of the property, which is about 90% of the purchase price, for the next 27 and a half years. So in a situation where you maybe have 10, 20, $30,000 a year in tax deductions, if you made $30,000 relatively, you would have zero in income taxes. You obviously still have to pay property taxes, but there's giant tax advantages to owning real estate. The next one is leverage, especially if the property is paid off. Okay, guys, if your property is paid off, or even if it's not, but especially if it's paid off, you're able to leverage that property through lines of credit or borrowing against it. Or maybe you have a very serious problem that's happened in your life and you actually have to liquidate this property. You have to sell it and get those gains and get that cash back in your hand after the property has went up in value, okay? So being able to leverage a property is super important after the property has appreciated. The next one is the rents go up, okay? Over time, you're able to normally push rents, which means your paycheck's going up, especially over time, okay? That is a huge benefit when you're owning real estate. And of course, the biggest one, the one you're probably even thinking about, is building wealth over time. Buying an asset and waiting, not waiting to buy an asset, is how you make money in real estate. I buy a property, I take care of the property, I don't defer the maintenance, I get good tenants, I increase rents when they're due, I keep my maintenance costs down, and I continuously build wealth one property after another. But how are you going to find these deals? So let's go over it just real quick. Number one, this is the way I do it, is I generate my own leads. A lot of you guys know I do a lot of wholesaling, do fix and flipping. But what I do is I cherry pick a lot of the deals that I want to keep as rentals if they fit my criteria. You can watch my other video on that, on the actual criteria of what we're looking for. But generating your own leads is one of the best ways, to find the deals you want, because you're going to cherry pick the absolute best deals with the best equity in the best areas by doing that, okay? I understand a lot of people, you don't have enough time to generate your own leads. This is why we're going to work with wholesalers. Wholesalers like myself or anyone else, we sell deals to investors at a discount. So as soon as they buy the property, there's already equity, there's already cash flow. In a lot of cases, there's even already a tenant in the property. Might not be the best tenant, but at least there's already somebody in there living who can be in the property while you get everything figured out. So somebody could be at the property so no one else breaks in or squats basically in the property, okay? So wholesalers is a great way to find that. If you want to find wholesalers in your area, simply type in, we buy houses, Kentucky, we buy houses, Atlanta, whatever, and other wholesalers and people like that will show up. You simply reach out to them and say, hey, put me on your buyers list. They'll text you, they'll call you when they have deals, and you can wait for the right deal to come along and you can get that, use that for your portfolio. Next, guys, simply, a lot of you guys probably already do this, but you work on the MLS or with agents. There's deals that do show up on the MLS. One of the downfalls is, there's a lot of people competing for those deals as well. But calling agents, doing what we call agent outreach, saying, hey, this is who I am. I have my money right. I'm looking for these type of properties. I'm looking to buy rentals. I do buy and hold. And they will start bringing you deals, or even sit you up on an MLS drip where they're going to start sending you deals every day, really, for that matter. And you're able to cherry pick the deals you want. You can make offers through agents and find a deal to fit your portfolio. The next guy is, if you are wholesaling, if you're generating leads, you probably do have a buyer's list already. I highly recommend leveraging your own buyer's list if you are wholesaling deals, and reach out to your buyer's list and say, hey guys, I'm a wholesaler, but I'm actually looking to buy some rentals for myself. I'm not looking to wholesale it. Anyone want to get rid of some properties? Does anybody have some rentals? I'm looking to also get in the business. You'd be shocked how many deals we do, even big deals we do out of our buyers list. When we call and say, hey, I have a house for sale at 123 Main Street, are you interested? They'll be like, no. I'm always like, do you have anything you want to sell? Happens all the time, guys. Reach out to your own buyers list. The last one, guys, the one you're probably most familiar with is like pre-foreclosure auctions. You can simply find this information on Google in your local area, when the auction's being held, what the requirements are for going to the auction, if you have to have a bond, or what is needed for you to get in there and start making bids and buying properties. One of the downfalls obviously is other people will be there, but they're not there all the time. People go on vacation and then have family situations. So even the heavy hitters can't be there every single auction, okay? And there's still plenty of opportunity for you to buy rentals at auction, guys. When you even hear about rentals is, hey, I don't have any money, or I have a limited amount of money, or I have some money, but I'm not sure how the process even works, so we're simply going to go over it pretty quick. The very first one is your traditional 20% down. You guys are probably familiar with that. Let me go ahead and say that all lenders and mortgage brokers are different, okay? Just because you go to one lender or one bank doesn't mean that's exactly how the other banks will do it. Some may require 25%, maybe a bigger deal is 30%, maybe a smaller deal is even 5%, okay guys? When you're looking for traditional banks, your brick and mortar banks, go and ask them what's their lending criteria for doing rental properties. How many will they let you do? Some people have a amount that they don't want you to go over, or a dollar amount you don't want to go over. And so we're talking about just the traditional way. I find a property, I put 20% down, and I buy it that way, okay? The next is FHA or VA loans. Now, precursor, you cannot buy FHA or VA properties on a loan with the intent to use it as a rental unless it is 4 units and under, aka the house hack. Like if you want to buy a duplex, a triplex, a quadplex, anything over 4 units is considered commercial. You're not going to be able to get into this world with that. But let's say FHA, meaning you simply have never bought a home before, VA being you're a veteran, thank you for your service, and they will let you get a loan at even 0% down. Should have put that here as a 0% down for your VA loan if you have enough VA credits, entitlement credits. If you want to go down that rabbit hole, simply put in VA entitlement credits in Google, and that'll tell you how to calculate your loan. But you can simply put even 3.5% down, and in some cases, in some states, you can even get that down payment into the purchase, depending on where you're at. And so if you want to live in one of the units and rent out the other 3 units, which to be honest, I don't necessarily recommend, because it can be a headache when you're basically living with your tenants, but you could do that with one of these types of properties in there. Now, FHA, I believe, has a 2-year minimum if you move away or a job transfer or something, that you can now transfer your VA property into a rental. Obviously, life happens. And that's what happened to me. My very first property, I was in it for 2 years and needed to move, and I put a tenant in it and had a FHA loan. But that is how you get around maybe using one of these low down payment loans and still buy a rental property. The next one is what you hear is debt service coverage ratio, or asset-based lending on the secondary market. Usually you'll use a mortgage broker to find you one of these properties. You can simply Google that and find the type of lenders that use this type of lending, where they're basing the loan off of the asset. It's not necessarily your credit. It's not necessarily how much cash you're putting down, but it's generally off of what the cash flow is, the value of the property, and all the terms are negotiable on that. But I've done these type of loans as well, and there's a lot of advantage to that. One of the downfalls is they may put a prepayment penalty, which is not ideal in there, especially if you're going to fix and flip it. You don't want to do that. But if you're going to have a long-term hold, they may put a prepayment penalty where you owe them a certain amount of money if you exit this transaction in a certain amount of time. Okay, so you have to weigh the pros and the cons for you. I don't necessarily recommend doing that. I've been in that position before. Thank goodness it was a long-term buy and hold, and that fell away after a certain amount of time. But you can definitely get loans based off just the value of the property without being concerned maybe with your credit score or your financial situation. The next is, and we've done plenty of deals like that, guys, is seller financing, subject to, wraparound mortgage, lease option. These are just creative terms for doing a creative finance deal with the actual seller. Seller financing being that the seller is going to turn into actually the bank. The property is completely paid off and they're going to create a mortgage note and they're going to finance you the property. Maybe with like a balloon payment where you will owe them a certain amount of money in the future. So maybe they do a 30-year mortgage, but you have a 5-year balloon where in the next 5 years you'll need to refinance through one of these other loans. Subject to simply meaning you're going to take over the payments for the seller on their property, subject to their current mortgage, where you step into the seller's shoes and take over that property. Maybe you give them some money to exit that property, but that is another way to take that property over. You can do a combination of even the both, what's called a wraparound mortgage. Maybe the seller still has a loan on the property for, let's call it $200,000, and they're willing to wrap another mortgage around that, a secondary mortgage for $100,000, and sell you the property for basically $300,000. And if that deal makes sense and everything cash flowed and it was worth it, you'd be able to do both that, make the seller's payments on their mortgage, and then have a wraparound mortgage where you basically pay the seller directly. And of course, a lease option, which isn't the most common, but is a way to do it, where you go into a purchase agreement with a seller. Maybe they had a vacant rental. You said, hey, look, this is what I'll put down as a lease option. And 5 years from now, I will exercise my option, but I want to sublease the property out to someone else during that time so you can get cash flow. And in the future, you can exercise your right to buy that property for a predetermined price in the future. Okay, so these are just some very vague examples of some creative finance ways you can take down a property. A lot of you guys hear about the BRRRR method. Simply, I buy it, I renovate, I rent it out, and then I refinance the property. It's a way for you to put a ton of cash into a property and then get it back out. So simply using really easy numbers. Let's say the property's worth $200,000. You buy the property for $80,000 and you put $30,000 in the property to get it where it needs to be. You then put a tenant in the property and then you go to refinance all the money back out that you had. Maybe you find a asset-based lending or even traditional lender who says, well, you already have more than 20% or 30% equity in the property. You may even come out ahead on this deal where you refinance it. You have none of your own cash in the property, and they even cut you a check at the day of closing. Okay, I've definitely done this one before as well. I don't base my entire business model around it. A lot of people do, and there's nothing wrong with that. I'm just not playing a long-term debt game, so that's why I don't do all my properties that way. But there is some definitely advantages to the BRRRR method. No lack of information online about the BRRRR method. So if you guys want to know more about that, simply look it up online. And of course, the simplest, the easiest, the highest cash flow way to do it is the cash method. Okay. I know, I'm probably going to get a lot of hate for that one, telling people just to go out and buy a property in cash, but I highly recommend it. I have properties paid off in cash. I like paying properties off in cash. I like the cash flow. I like to leverage the properties and have a line of credit on those properties in case I need that cash, so I still have access to the capital. I like the peace of mind if tenants don't pay, my property's paid off. I still have insurance and maintenance, but there's nothing like not having that debt or that monthly payment coming out of my account every month. So I enjoy building my portfolio, paying things off in cash. If you say, hey, look, how's that ever going to work for me? Then I would highly suggest getting your active income, your wholesaling, your flipping, your 9-to-5 job. Get that to pay you as much as it possibly can. Your side hustles, generate some cash, start paying properties off, and so you can leave generational wealth to your family. You can use whatever rules you want in your business, but I'm going to just go over simply what I do in my business and why we do it. Okay, let's check it out. So I'm looking for 3-bed, 1-bath, single-family houses with a garage. Reason being, guys, I stay away from 2-bed houses. It's just really difficult to get market value, raise rents, and get better tenants. Okay, when I have a 3-bed, 1-bath house, that's usually a family. It's like a starter house or a starter position for a family to get into. Okay, and I can get market rent or even sometimes above market rent when it comes to a 3-bedroom house, especially when it has a garage. Okay, guys, people have a lot of stuff. I have a ton of stuff in my garage, and if you have a garage, it's probably full of stuff as well. When you have a garage, people are able to put stuff there versus their storage unit. Okay, so when you're asking higher rents, people will cancel that storage unit. They'll put all the stuff where they live, and it's the best way to get the most amount of money for the property. Okay, next one is I'm staying away from any bad area. If you wonder what area is bad, it's an area you don't want to go to at night. It's an area you don't want to send one of your loved ones at any time of the day for that matter. Bad areas attract bad tenants. Rentals are a long-term play. You don't want to be 5, 10, 20 years down the road and regret the area you've invested in. Obviously, you can sell it, but why already start in a bad area when you can go ahead and start finding better areas to get into, okay? The next one is when I do my repairs, they're always ready to flip. Guys, if anytime I want to exit a property, I want to sell a property off, it's already ready to go. I didn't sham the remodel when I got that rent ready. It's ready to go to flip it anytime I want. I can cash out of that property and be done with it if something's going on, and I can 1031 that money into a different property. The next one is the most important one. I'm looking for cash flow day one. I live in Kentucky. This is relatively easier for me in Kentucky. I understand that all markets are different, but I'm definitely looking for the 1% rule. Simply meaning if I have 150,000 into the property, I want to rent it out for 1,500 a month. I know some people that can get above the 1% rule, and on a couple of my properties, I'm almost at the 2% rule just because I bought them during the pandemic. But I know every market is different. But if you want to cash flow, you want to make money, you definitely need to be shooting for at least the 1% rule. The next is apartments. I have a mix between single family and apartments. When I'm doing apartments, I'm looking for a minimum 2-bed, 1-bath unit. I have some 1-beds right now that we're looking to sell in 1031 just because it's so hard to maximize the profits and raise the rents on a 1-bedroom place. There's only so much money that one individual or even a couple that lives in a 1-bedroom apartment can make. We want to look for a 2-bed, 1-bath that is like a transition place for someone before they go into a house, okay? The next is a familiar area. We want to invest in places that we're familiar with, not just completely nowhere. Even if you want to do virtual investing, learn about the area. What's the market like? Is it growing? Is it decreasing? Are we making more money or making less money? What is going on in those areas? Okay. So let's focus on a familiar area when we're trying to invest. The next one is for me. I never self-manage. Okay. I recommend you not self-managing either if you're looking for autonomy and time. I understand in every area it's different. In my area, I only pay 7%, upwards at max 10% for management, which is great for me. I could not take the money that I made and then hire someone for the amount of money that I currently pay a property manager. But I just value autonomy and time. Maybe you guys are younger, maybe you have smaller properties or smaller amount of properties and you want to manage, hey, that's fine. But as a rule for me, I'm not growing this business and scaling with everything on my shoulders to do the management. But let's just simply talk about what is the best rental term length for a property. And the answer is, well, it all depends. Really, it all depends on you, your area, and what you're looking to do. Obviously, short-term rentals being your Airbnbs, your vacation rentals, it's super attractive. There's a lot of cash flow, a lot of pros when it comes to that. Cons being management fees, if you're not going to self-manage, are usually quite higher. And then, of course, the turnover on the property being tenants coming in, destroying the place and so forth. But there is a ton of money to be made in the Airbnb and short-term rental market. And that just really depends on you. How active or do you want to be in that business? Or, what kind of property you're looking to? Are you looking to use that property as well throughout the year? Maybe you have a beach house or something like that, and you want to also use that property, so you want to have access to it. Using a short-term rental can be absolutely great. I have one Airbnb that I end up turning into a long-term rental because that's what I prefer. I like that stability of the cash. I don't like the turnover on the tenants, and I don't like the higher fees. In my area, it was 20, 25% even on management fees. And so that didn't necessarily work out for me, but I did use a conditional use permit. That's another thing you may have to get in your city. Every city is different when it comes to planning and zoning, is if your property can even be a short-term rental, okay? So before you purchase the property in your due diligence period, you definitely want to make sure is your property able to be the term length you're looking for, like as far as a short term? Another one is the midterm rents. A lot of times you don't hear much about this one, but there's a lot of money to be made when it comes to midterm. Anything basically we're talking about over 30 days. A lot of times you see the 30 to 90 day, even 6 month range. And we're usually talking about traveling professionals, okay? Predominantly you hear about traveling nurses. There's a website called Furnished Finder, I believe, and a lot of midterm rentals go on there. And it's also a way, at least in my city, to skirt the whole conditional use permit, because in my city, if I rent a property out for 30 days and over, you do not need a conditional use permit, okay? And so if you still want to utilize your property, especially maybe if you're traveling back and forth, or if it's a vacation home and you want more stability in cash, maybe you're not looking for a lot of turnover every week or every month, then going with a midterm rental also might be great. You still have to provide everything in the house just like you would on a short-term rental, but you're able to make a lot of cash flow, more than you would on a long-term, because it's a midterm rental. And a lot of traveling professionals get vouchers from their job in order to cover the expense on a midterm stay. And there's a high demand, especially in an area where there's hospitals or, a lot of professionals. And of course, you guys already know the long-term rents, the 12-month, the 2-year leases, and so forth. One of the advantages, that money is consistent. You might have people not pay, but that can happen in any of them for that matter. But long-term rents is what I prefer. The management fees are the lowest. I like to get a great tenant and a great tenant to stay, get moved into the property, live at the property, basically make the property their home. I mean, that's what they're paying for. And in the beginning, I go ahead and put all the rent increases up front in the honeymoon phase. They know exactly year after year how much that rent's already going to increase, so the conversation isn't weird or anything like that. When that's time to come up, they know the terms of the lease, what I'm going to fix, what I'm not going to fix. I don't run any slums. That is 100% for sure. So we take care of problems as soon as they happen. But I prefer long-term for me. It's what fits my investing goals. But any of these works, and I can be convinced on a particular deal to do any of these if that deal makes sense. So I'm not stuck in my ways on just doing long-term, short-term, midterm, long-term, whatever works for the particular deal. That's what I'm going to suggest doing. If you guys are doing any of these, you're doing short-term, midterm, long-term, let me know in the comments below what's working best for you. I'll see you guys on the next video.